Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. This is going to be probably longer than I want it to be because there's actually quite a bit to get through. Mainly because I did get pretty much an entire series via Better World Books, as well as some local retailers. They had a bunch of sales. So aside from like my normal pre-order stuff, which is very few actually, there's a lot of other stuff that I didn't necessarily expect to be buying. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll just get straight into it. So I'm going to start with anime, and this is actually not something I got locally. It wasn't anything, it's not even an Australian release, it is the US release. But this is a series that I've wanted for a while. I had certain parts in a different format before, but I managed to get these particular sets from a Facebook group seller, so they were cheaper than retail, and it worked out for me. So that was part 1 and part 2 of Durarara, the second half. So this is the show arc for this series. I've mentioned before that Durarara is not my favorite of Naruto's works. I do much prefer Bakuno, but I do think as an adaptation, the anime is very good. It manages to balance all the different stories very well. And it does still have like a pretty likable, crazy cast of characters. This follow-up was quite a few years after the initial anime, but they did a pretty solid release, just continuing on with the level that people expected, and it was really good. These sets are the Aniplex of America editions, so really prohibitively expensive for probably a lot of people. There are more affordable UK and Australian releases of this show, but it doesn't have the OVA episodes, which are exclusive to the Aniplex releases. I used to have the UK release of this series without the OVA, and I don't remember why I sold it on or what happened, but I did manage to find these part 2 for a very good price, as I said, on Facebook. So whether or not I'll be able to pick up the rest of the series in, a certain amount of time, I don't know, especially because I am trying to save money at the moment. But yeah, it is, a pretty solid beginning of the series, and I'm hoping to get more, although probably not in the near future. Next is another US Blu-ray release, and this is actually just a typical Sentai release, but it's Tamako Love Story, the film sequel to Tamako Market, one of KyoAni's sort of lesser regarded series. Sort of like some of their other franchise films, most notably The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. I think that KyoAni has really hit it out of the park with these sequel follow-up films. I haven't seen the Beyond the Boundary one, but this film is much better, more cohesive, and in my opinion entertaining than the television show. I did like aspects of the television show, but it was a bit all over the place, and it had 2 very different plot threads that you followed. This one, after like one of them was sort of resolved in the anime series, this particular film just focuses on the secondary one, which was sort of not resolved to a particular point. And yeah, it's really good. I really love this. It's a really sweet movie. I don't know, it's one that I can rewatch and feel really happy emotions about. It's just really good, and I would encourage you to watch it, especially if you haven't seen it, because it is, and even if you're not like super fond of Tamako Market, it's still well worth the watch. I think it's a pretty good standalone film. You don't really need to have seen the television show to understand what's going on in this one. And yeah, and I did manage to get this off of eBay, so it was a little bit cheaper than expected, and I really honestly thought this was going to be the only anime that I had for this pickup, but as I said, certain things came up, and that is not the case anymore. So yes, onward to the next thing. So next is the Australian Blu-rays that I got. As I said, a local sort of store was having a buy one get one free on all of their Blu-rays. So I took the opportunity. I actually made 2 orders just so I could get like the lowest price possible. But I took the opportunity to catch up on some of the like my lower priority shows. So the first couple things I bought was Sailor Moon R, the newest Blu-ray release, and Sailor Moon S as well, which is, you know, the most recent one. We do have Sailor Moon the 4th season. Can't remember what it is. Start is 5. Super S. Sailor Moon Super S coming out I think this month or next month, but it's only going to be like the first half, not the complete series, whereas these ones were released as complete sets because they had been previously just released on DVD only here. Yeah. Like I've said before with classic Sailor Moon, I'm not really a nostalgic fan. I didn't really have much of an opportunity to watch it whilst I was growing up and whilst I was the target demographic. But re-watching them, I am actually, or watching them for the first time at the age that I am, is a pretty interesting experience. It definitely holds up, even though it is sort of an older show that was sort of just milked and added all these episodes added to sort of profit on the merchandising that they could make for this series. It definitely was a phenomena, but the more we go into the story with these later seasons, the more and more interesting it becomes. I have read the original manga, so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with the Sailor Moon story, and I'm sure a lot of people just through like cultural osmosis are very aware of this series as well. But I do think that this series is one to actually try, even if you aren't necessarily like the most nostalgic Sailor Moon fan. You shouldn't discount it just because there's a remake either. The remake is very good, and I've seen the first 2 2 arcs of that as well. And it is, I mean, fundamentally it's the same story. This older series has a lot more filler, of course, because it's way longer. But it shouldn't be discounted, just like how I don't think you should discount the older Hunter x Hunter series just because 2011 series has come out and been, you know, so popular. And the older Fullmetal Alchemist anime as well. I think they're, in my opinion, a lot of anime that get remakes or series that have multiple anime adaptations fundamentally show that story is a pretty good one, and you should actually try all the different adaptations, and I haven't really been disappointed by following that rule so far. But yes, and in addition to those 2 things, I also got the Sailor Moon R movie, which is just, you know, obviously a single Blu-ray case. And so I bought these 2 boxes together just so I would only have to pay for the most expensive one of these, which was around 95 Australian dollars. So that's closer to maybe 70 US dollars. And this is this is what I got for free for my second order, although it wasn't much of a savings compared to these 2. And the last thing I got for the anime and for that particular sale was My Hero Academia Season 2 Part 1. This is the limited edition box set, as you can see. It mostly mimics the US release, just like the previous Australian edition did. The only difference is that the box for Season 1 at least was a little bit wider because Australia and the UK uses like the 14mm Blu-ray cases as the standard compared to the 12mm cases that the US uses. 11 or 12, one of the 2. And I've said this before, but I'm not a huge fan of like this, where there's a lot of extras, physical extras, and they chuck it in the box, and then they have like a secondary part 2 limited edition where you just chuck it as is on the shelf next to this. I prefer to have all of the series like in one box, or like at least the complete season in one box, so it takes up less space. So for me, what I'll likely do is once the second half of the series comes out, I am just going to buy the standard release. I don't think I'll buy the limited edition release, because as I said, I don't need all this guff. And I'll chuck it in this box, and consider, depending on how much room is still there, I may put the film, like the spin-off film that, I mean, we're probably not going to see for 3 or 4 years. But I'm going to put it in this box, even though I think it technically lines up with season 3. I don't know. But I'm trying to conserve as much space as I can. So whether or not that will happen, we'll see. I might pick up the the limited edition second half for particular extras, but I don't think so. Maybe just the book. I don't know. I'll have to see what happens once it comes out, because this one, I really, really enjoy this show, as I think most people do. It's very, very good, but I'm not, like, Funimation's sort of going the way that Sentai is, and unfortunately Universal, who is the one who released this here in Australia, is just, like, directly mimicking the US release. And guys, I don't need bigger boxes. I just want stylish, nice, complete sets. I don't need to have a lanyard and stickers and whatever else. This has like fake pennants in it and the headband. Like, I don't care about any of that shit. But I'm maybe in the minority. But yes, this is the last that I got for anime, and it's a great show. I am happy that I have it and that I can rewatch it with the dub, because I'm watching this show currently with my mum in the dub, so she's enjoying it. But yeah, that's all for the anime. Now, before I get into the manga, I do actually have one light novel, and it's not exactly new, but it is sort of a newer series, and that is Legend of the Galactic Heroes. This first volume came out a couple months ago, I want to say sometime last year, but it is volume 1, Dawn, written by Yoshiki Tanaka. This is like an actual novel. I don't think it qualifies as a light novel, but I am actually going to be reading this for EnglishLightNovel.com's like summer reading challenge. It's one of their planned books in the schedule, and it is one that I wanted to read for a very long time, but just never fully commit to buying and reading. So I'm very happy that this summer reading program is actually encouraging me to actually try it out. Yeah, I've been reading some like actual prose a lot more, just having since become a regular reviewer on the website. I do try to get like a review out once a week. Sometimes I'm a little bit later than I want, but in general I try to do it once a week. And this one, I don't know whether I will make a separate review for or just discuss within the like reading program, summer reading program, but it is a series that I've wanted to read for a while and I'm fairly interested in. I don't know a huge amount about the series aside from it's like a political space opera-ish series, very, very well regarded. The anime is huge and a classic. The new anime, people are happy that it's being made, but it's also not as good. I don't know. I've heard mixed things about the current anime. I don't know much about it, as I said, but I'm looking forward to reading this because it is something that you don't necessarily see a lot in current, at least with light novels. As I said, I don't think this is a light novel, but I think people compare it to the current light novel market and trends. So, because it is, obviously just been licensed and released in English. So, looking forward to reading it. I don't have too much to say, but hopefully it'll be really good, and I'll keep buying it once I have a better idea of the series in general. Then we have the new release manga, the first being a Seven Seas title, Hungry for You, Endo Yasuko Stalks the Night. This particular book is, I think, one of two, the first of two. I think it is complete. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but it's a Yuri series by Flower Child. I think it's meant to be like quite comedy focused, but I didn't find it all that humorous. It's about a girl, or about a couple girls at I believe an all girls school, and one witnesses one of her classmates like attacking another girl, because girls have gone missing over the past 6 months or whatever, and the new girl at school is being very suspicious, and all points lead towards her being a vampire, and I think it's quite like obvious, and I don't know whether it's meant to be a joke that's like, oh yeah, well, she's obviously a vampire, but the other girl doesn't believe it. She's just like, oh no, don't jump to conclusions. And I don't know, but they come to an agreement that the one girl, Endo Yasuko, will drink her blood. I think will bite her nape. It's a Yuri, so it's very like, oh, sexual tension, in exchange for food, basically, because the main girl is not doing too hot. She doesn't eat all that much, and she's constantly working and trying to make rent and food money and all that. So free meals for allowing this girl to nibble on you. Yeah, it's a weird one. I wouldn't really recommend it. I was interested in it, and I don't know if it met my expectations, because it is quite an odd thing. I thought Yasuko and the other girl were fairly like decent characters. They certainly had a particular relationship, and how their personalities bounce off of each other. I thought the two side characters were pretty just there to fill the space. They could have been removed and been totally fine. You're not missing out. Yeah, I didn't find it particularly funny, so I can't really recommend it, which is a shame, because I wanted it to be good. That's the other girl. But maybe, it's only, if you're a fan of Yuri, you might like it, especially one of these series that's a little less than the typical, a little Freudian slip there, a little more than the typical just, girls in a girls' school falling in love, and, lilies blooming around them, and everything's light and softness and bubbles. It does have this harder edge of is she actually killing people? Is she a vampire? It's got the supernatural twist to it, which is something. It's interesting, but unless you're looking for something really different for your Yuri, it's not even that really different. But if you're a Yuri fan, you probably like it, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's not, yeah. And that's the first time I've said that about a manga in a long time. I'm sorry, Hungry for You, but you just didn't do it for me. And, yeah, not great. Back on track with some series that I do really enjoy and that I'm really excited about is the 4th and penultimate volume for Gangsta Cursed, the Marco Adriano episode, or whatever you want to call it. There is going to be 5 books in this series. I do think it finished in Japanese, but as I've said with this series, I think Marco is a very, very interesting side character, and it's good that this series like focused on him. It gives a little bit more depth to the setting and his character motivations in particular. I haven't read this book yet just because I'm thinking I'll just wait for the last 2 books to come out and then reread the whole thing, because I've read the first 3 and it's really good. It's really, really good. I have faith that it will end well. Obviously it ends with Marco being the Marco that we know in the main story, but yeah, it's good, and I'm looking forward to more. Gangsta's a pretty solid action series, very sort of grim and dark and dirty without being like despicable or hopeless. It still has elements of humanity and warmth and things you can attach yourself to, which another series that I'm going to be talking a little bit later about in this video also has, which I think is a really delicate balance, and I think that Kosuke in Gangsta and also in this spin-off has done really, really well. She doesn't do the art for this series, but she does that for the main series. Yeah, there's just this, despite the grim setting and sort of this nihilistic worldview of like, what's the point? Everything's terrible. Like, our life is shit. There's still hope there, and there's still characters that care about each other, and you can feel this familiarity and the friendship and family that you create when you're all stuck in a bad situation. So yeah, I think when you have strong character writing, those sorts of settings aren't nearly as just doom and gloom and terrible like some other series handle it. But yeah, Gangsta Cursed number 4. Haven't read this volume in particular, but the series as a whole is marvelous. Definitely pick it up, especially if you're a Gangsta fan. Just really, really solid, like seinen action fighting with a bit more to it on the character side. So yeah, it's a solid read, and I look forward to more of both this and the main story. The last one I got for like actual new releases that came out this month is Delicious in Dungeon Volume 5 by Ryoko Kui, and this volume was incredible. Like, I don't say that lightly, because it took a very different turn than I expected with this series, because last volume we sort of had a conclusion to the main issue, and then this volume, rather than sort of settling for that, it completely flipped it on its head and really set the issue back to square one. You learn a lot more about the characters and their backstories and their motivations in this book from the perception of other people, which I think is great, because we do have some more adventurers joining the group, or joining the cast as a whole. They have been, shown in previous books, but they actually are taking front and center focus for parts of this, and I can assume parts of future volumes. It's so good. I've said this before about Delicious in Dungeon, but I think the premise is maybe something that a lot of people don't know how to assess, because ultimately it is a food manga more so than a fantasy manga, but it's like playing a D&D campaign where the focus is on the meals you're making rather than the monsters you're fighting, which is not a bad thing. And Ryoko Kui is hilarious. She has great comedic timing. Her art just is wonderfully pointed to how she can use it to exemplify the scenes, and it makes the comedy funnier, and all of the comedy in the series is really well-meaning and good-hearted. It's not it doesn't feel like you're laughing at anyone. You're laughing at the situation or the ridiculousness of everything going on. This particular book also contains a panel that I have seen as a meme, like, everywhere on the internet. But yeah, aside from the comedic aspects, which really have been sort of more so the focus of the series up until this point, the smaller plot hints that were given are being collected and expanded on in this volume, which is good because it gives the series as a whole a better direction. You get this fascinating new perspective on characters that we've grown to love over the previous 4 volumes, but now you don't necessarily know if what you're seeing is truly who they are, or it is just what they've had to become after, it resulting in what's happened up until then. It's really, really, really good because it makes you question your own understanding of the characters, but also like the motivations of these new characters. It's, yeah, I've said this before, but Delicious in Dungeon is really, really great. Very funny, very likable, and warm. Again, very warm. Like, you can feel the found family emotions in this series. It was one of my favorite debuts of last year, and one that completely flew under my radar. I didn't expect to enjoy nearly as much as I did, and I'm just so glad that I discovered it, and it has been consistently great ever since Volume 1. So now I'm going to start with some older Viz stuff. This one I bought new. The next series I'm going to talk about I bought secondhand, but this one I bought new, and it was one that I had heard a lot of really good things about. One that I did read the first 3, 4, 5 volumes on Kindle and just absolutely fell in love with, and so decided to pick up. And this is the first, as I said, the first volume. I am expecting the entire series over the next couple weeks, so you'll definitely see that next video. But it's Volume 1 of Doro Hedoro by Kyu Hayashida. This is a seinen action series about Kaiman, who's like a guy with a lizard head, and his associate, this woman, what's her name? Nikaido. And they live in like this terrible, wretched city, just almost destitute, full of crime, dirty, violent, etc. And they're looking for the sorcerer who changed Kaiman's head to this weird, like, lizard dinosaur one. It's a fascinating read because it's one that, as I mentioned with Gangsta Cursed, it has such a dismal and broken and dirty setting, but the characters, both our main characters and sort of the quote-unquote bad guys of the piece, are also interesting and have such wonderful relationships with each other, and it's a pleasure to read them. There's something, like, Hayashida's artwork is just so dark and messy and grotesque, and the series is so hyper-violent and just almost, retch-inducing with its gore, but it's still really heartwarming and emotional, and you really connect to these characters. As I said, I have only read the first couple volumes, I'm nowhere near up to date with the series, but I hope to rectify that within the next couple of weeks once I actually get the books. But this is one that I've heard amazing things about from so many different people with so many different tastes. A lot that I respect their opinions on things, a lot that I don't really like have the same opinions with. So I wanted to give it a shot, and that's why I did buy it on Kindle, and just absolutely fell in love with the volumes I did read. So, as I said, decided to pick it up. This series is almost impossible to describe because it is so conflicting to what might be the expectation going in. Because even though it is this dark, gritty, violent, seinen story, it's much more... I would describe it as like watching a sitcom within like a horror film universe or world where people get their heads smashed in with mirrors and people can have their like be decapitated and their spine like just dangling out wherever, but at the same time you really love the friendships that have and like the relationships between all of these characters. And you can tell like how much they care about each other and how much, you know, their goals matter to each other. It's really interesting. Maybe not the best series for people who are squeamish, but like I don't watch a lot of like actual horror movies because I'm a big baby and I don't like gore of any sort. Even if I know it's like totally fake and terrible. But in general, like horror anime and manga, I don't have too much of an issue with that stuff. So, and this is just a continued case of that. Like the violence, the hyper violence of it is almost secondary to like what is actually going on. You're just like, oh, okay, well, that's how that worked out. The sorcerers are like really twisted and weird, and like there's so many things with morality and doing the right thing for in general and then for yourself, and yeah, it's really good and I'm so glad that I gave it a chance. Yeah, it's one that Viz has been putting out for ages. I know it's fairly popular for them. The series definitely earns its explicit content for the violence, not for anything else. Like at least in the first couple volumes, we don't have hardcore sex scenes, so it doesn't earn it in that that sense. But it is really good. Maybe a little bit of a weird one. I'm sure plenty of people are already buying it or have read it and bought it and everything else, but it's one that was a little bit new for me, and despite its reputation, I had just never gotten around to. Now that I have, I'm really enjoying it, and I hope to read the rest of it in the coming weeks whenever I get the books. Finally, and apologies for camera angle change, but that's the magic of filming, folks. Finally, for manga, I have the almost complete series of After School Charisma. I already own volumes 1 and 2, so this is volume 3. Volume 5. I am expecting volume 4 in the mail sometime, so you should see it in the next video. Volume 6. Volume 7. In this series, I did previously own up until volume 7 with the Changyi releases. So volume 8 onwards is stuff that I haven't read. Volume 9, this is of course the Viz release. But this series is like a pretty interesting seinen by Kumiko Soekane. Volume 11. And finally, volume 12. And so, if you have no familiarity with this series, it's this seinen set in a high school where this guy, Shiro, is sort of the only non-cloned member of the high school. It's in this near future where human cloning is viable. And so all of his classmates are like notable historic figures, people like Napoleon, Mozart, Einstein, Florence Nightingale, etc. Many who are being who were cloned and being trained to sort of continue the good works and the leadership that their originals started, and others like Hitler and Rasputin, who are instead have been cloned to sort of repent for all of the terrible things that the originals did and sort of do good works as sort of like a karmic like a karmic punishment for stuff that really these kids have, they didn't do it. They have nothing to do with it aside from DNA connection. Which, yeah, in certain ways this series is very weird and like it expects you to have a lot of presumption for how this sort of high school started and how people could support this idea, because there's a lot of issues that the manga actually does bring up in regards to like if you clone someone or something, the cells are like that thing's only gonna live as long as the cells that you took from the original. So if you took cells from a 47-year-old and cloned them, they're only going to live to be 47 because that's how old their cells are. That's how old they know to be. They've proved it in like animal cloning and plant like all these other clones. They know that's how it is. As well, DNA, even though if you share the same DNA, you're not going to be exactly identical. You see this all the time with identical twins. No one's going to be exactly like each other. And so, like, even if you cloned someone's DNA, there's a high chance that their eye color could be different, or their skin, like the shade of their skin, or, hair color or density. It's all weird, and you can never make like a perfect clone of anyone. That's really very unrealistic sci-fi shit. So in that regards, I think Sui kind of uses that to her advantage in a certain respect, because a lot of these historic figures don't look like the actual historic person. But that might just because they're teens, and so people look different when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. But at the same time, I like to think that maybe she was a little bit more smart about it than that. In addition to that, and is something that is a huge theme throughout this series, is sort of self-identity and personal dreams. So a lot of these kids are being trained to be like the next Mozart because they literally are Mozart. But then that pressure of having to achieve in a certain discipline really screws up a lot of these kids, because what if you're Mozart and everyone's wanting you to write the next great, musical piece, and you might even have a talent for music, but you enjoy, I don't know, football more, or you enjoy rock climb, like you enjoy something else than what your discipline is supposed to be. Or what if you don't even have talent in music? How would that screw you up? So it's really interesting in that regard. So as I said, I've only read up to volume 7, which is a little bit past halfway. Certain things in this larger conspiracy, because it's not, sunshine and roses, there's a lot of backlash from certain terrorist groups who are like killing these clones because they go against like the natural cycle of life. So that sort of gets brought into it as well. If you're looking for an interesting like speculative sci-fi with a lot of weird gray morality, this one you might want to try out. I'm also really looking forward to her upcoming series, Versailles of the Dead, which is again like a historical piece, but with zombies added. And yeah, it seems really interesting. And with this series and with that series and with her one shot with Glashma, something Glashma, they are all, well, I didn't necessarily like the one shot a whole lot, but all of them are really interesting ideas. And even if the like actual telling of the story gets a little bit muddled and convoluted, it's still really fascinating to read. Yeah, the entire series has been released in English by Viz. It's for their signature imprint. It's pretty solid. As I said, I haven't finished it yet. I hope to in the next coming weeks after exams and everything. I have some free time. But yeah, weird one. But pardon me. Yawning. I've been studying too much. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's one that I'm glad to actually finish and say, okay, I've read it and finished it. For the volumes that I did read up to, which is more than half, I was enjoying it. But I do think it requires some suspension of disbelief, especially like governments supporting a project that cloned people, famous people, and famous bad people. Like, would anyone agree to clone Hitler? Like, I don't care if it's like, oh, it's redemption, he was a great leader and he can do so much for the world. I don't think anyone wants to clone Hitler. I'm sorry, I know circumstances make you the person you are, but like, that is not a good decision, and I don't think anyone would agree to that. But like I said, it is some suspension of disbelief. But regardless, it's an interesting premise, and I think it's done fairly well. Yeah, one to check out maybe if you haven't heard of it and it sounds interesting. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just happy to finally finish it up and finally have the opportunity to read it in its entirety. So that was everything that I got for this last half of May, and oh boy, it was way more than I expected. Next video I should have a lot again, because as I mentioned, Dorohedoro. I also have more pre-ordered stuff than I did with this series, because I really only got like 3 in this one. And I do have a couple anime, only 1 or 2, so way less than is in this stack here, but still I think a good mix of a lot of stuff. But oh my goodness, this one had way more than I expected, mainly because there were particular sales and I didn't want to miss the opportunity. As I've mentioned, I did get these secondhand. They all came from Better World Books, website I've mentioned before. Otherwise, all of my manga came from Book Depository, and as I have mentioned, and as many of you may know, I do have a Book Depository affiliate link in the description. So if you click that and buy something from their store, I get a little bit of money just as a thank you, and you know, maybe opening you up to their website, because it really is like the only way I get manga majority of the time. I couldn't afford to have a collection otherwise. They're free worldwide shipping, fantastically good prices. For anyone outside of the US, it is the way to go for buying books of all sorts, not just manga, but novels, non-fiction, whatever you like, they got it. It's, you know, no, I don't expect you, and you're not under any obligation to click that link or use that affiliate link. I'm just letting you know it's there, and if you do choose to use it, I really appreciate it. Also in my description I have my Twitter handle, or a link to my Twitter account, which I'm on pretty consistently. I post a lot of just general stuff about what I'm reading or watching, or opinions on the market in general. So if that sort of thing interests you, you can follow me there. Otherwise, you know, I do try and put out a video at least once a week. I'm doing pretty good on my schedule. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If there's a particular video you want to see from me, you can either leave a comment or message me or direct, like, at me at Twitter, and I'll take it in stride and see how it goes. But yes, so thank you so much for watching. I apologize as always for the length of these videos. I do try, but we all know how good I am at that. If you've enjoyed, subscribe. If not, you know, don't. That's fine. But I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.